Hey everybody, my name is Stone, and today we are going over the second part of Project Alpha. In today's tutorial, we're going over how to create player health, which is a bit more in-depth than just having a simple bar. And we want to create a food bar, and a stamina bar, and a water bar. And I'm going over what I would be doing in how I would set it up in a second. We won't go too much into UI development, but if people are very interested in getting into UI development, I'm gonna release a UI toolkit I've worked over the years onto Patreon. So if anybody is interested in that, you can check out my Patreon and check it out there. All right, so let's just jump into it. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into my data folder and create a new struct folder. Inside that struct folder, I want to create a health folder. And inside that health folder, I want to create two structures. Why two structures? Because we have one major structure which holds all the substructures. So let's say we have head, shoulder, head, thorax, belly, arm left, arm right, leg left, leg right. I like to keep them in a higher level structure. In my case, I have a lower level structure which contains every limb and a higher level structure which contains all the limbs. So let me just get right into it. I'm gonna make a structure. I'm gonna prefix this with S for structure, then health, H, S underscore H underscore limb. Limb is not the right word, body part. And in body part, we are going to start out with a string array. Why do we use a string array in this case? We're using the string array so we can easily modularly apply things to body parts. So the thinking behind that is we can just say this body part is broken, or you have a concussion, or something like that. So you can modularly, without having to create specific structures, apply status effects. We won't work too much with this now. This is more something set up for later. So what we're gonna do this body. What are we gonna call this? Body part status. Probably gonna rename this later down the line, but for now I'm gonna call this body part status. Then I want just a float value, which is max health. And then I want another value, which is gonna be current health. Why do I create a max health value and just not round it to around 100? Because I wanna give different body parts more health. For example, I wanna give the head less health than general body parts, just mainly because the head is a very vulnerable part of the body, so it should also reflect that in health struct, in my opinion. So we created this, then we can now go into blueprint struct s sh health, and I'm just going to call this health so it's just overarching for everything. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my sh body part and I'm gonna start doing all my body parts I need. Head, thorax, torso. I'm not so sure about that one, but I'm gonna call it torso. Left, right, okay. Left arm, right arm, left leg, right leg. There we go. So what I can do just really quickly, I can expand those all, and max health on a head should be 100, thorax 125, 125, 125, 125, 150, 150, 150, 150, 150, 150. And yeah, so the only lower health parts are everything but the limbs. So head, thorax, and torso is all a lower health class, and everything above that has more health, is a higher health class. All right, so what we can do now is we can take this go into our blueprint, go into our character, and what we just gonna want to do is we want to add a, it was a struct, which is sh health. There we go. Player health. And we don't want this to make, I don't think we should do this rep notify, so I'm gonna just make this replicated. All right. So now that we have made this, we can get into adding just some food stuff, some stamina stuff. So what I'm just gonna do is I'm gonna make free floats, which one is stamina, one is food, and one is water. And what I'm gonna do with those, I'm gonna clamp them. Actually, I don't need to clamp them, but I'm gonna set the default value to 1 on each of those. And they also only need to be replicated, not rep notify, because other players do not need to know about our stamina, food, or water. So next up, what I want to do is I want to create a new folder and call this UI for user interface. In this UI folder, I'm gonna make a widget blueprint, and this is gonna be my player HUD. Okay, this player HUD we're gonna deal a bit more in a second, and let me just open this map so we have our general setup. And in my project preferences, I'm just gonna really quickly set this as a startup map. So test level. All right, then inside our blueprints, after we created this player HUD, we want to create a blueprint class, and this is gonna be a HUD blueprint class. So we're gonna call this HUD player HUD, and in this HUD, what we're gonna do is on begin play, you wanna create widget. The widget in question is player HUD, and we want to promote this to a variable, which is gonna be ref player HUD, and then we want to add this to viewport. Why am I doing a variable? Because then later I can use this to do a general call. Like, let's say we have a function that goes from the player and says, I want to update my user interface. So what I do is I call this to I call from character to my HUD, and from my HUD to the widget I wanna work with. All right. So going back into the UI folder, I want to make a new widget blueprint, which is going to be widget blueprint _ inventory. This will be mainly to display, for now, health of body parts, status of body parts, without going too much into the visual part, mainly just going into the logic part and laying it out and getting it working. So what I'm going to do is make a horizontal box. In that horizontal box, I'm gonna set this horizontal box to fill first of all. Then I'm gonna make a vertical box, get a spacer, and I'm gonna fill this like this, and I'm gonna fill this like 0.25. Now I have a little bar over here. Technically, I think it would be better if we actually switch this around. Take a vertical box, take a horizontal box, and then pretty much have 2 rows on the bottom to display our current status. Maybe one on the top, maybe one on the bottom. So let me just really quickly make this. Take a spacer and take this in between those 2. Set those to 0.25. I apologize if I'm going very quickly with UI. It's just probably most of you are anyway gonna create something on your own, but still I try to go in the speed so everybody can keep up. So actually let me change this to 0.15. And now we have a top row, which we can use for health, and a bottom row, which we can use for other stati. So now in here, I'm gonna do something really quickly, because we're gonna need a lot of different things that we can update. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna widget blueprint module, and I'm gonna call this module a stat-high listing. There you go. In that stat-high listing, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a scale box. Then in the scale box, I'm gonna make a size box, so we can determine the aspect ratio we wanna have this widget on. So in my case, I could say we wanted 16:4, and it would keep that aspect ratio, ignoring how big the container would be that it's housed in. So because we probably want to edit this aspect ratio, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna first of all call this aspect ratio box, something like that, and make this variable. And on begin play, we want to set max desired height and max desired width. Height, no, it's width, right? Yeah, width, set width override, set height override. There we go, that's the right one. And how we want to actually deal with this variable is I'm just gonna really quickly create a variable over here, and this is gonna be a vector, but not a normal vector, and a vector 2D, and this is our aspect ratio. And what I want to do is expose and spawn and instant editable. So I pull this in here, split the struct, and width override, height override. Let me reorder those just so the widget is a bit cleaner. And right here, plug this into here, and plug this into here. And reroute this a bit more, reroute this a bit more. Also, if you want to reroute something, you can just double click. And if you want to straighten lines, you can just select it, press Q, and then you can manually adjust it a little bit. All right, so this is gonna be there for setting our aspect ratio. Then what we want in here is we want a function, and we want to, for example, have event update progress. So what I want to create in here is, first of all, I want a progress bar, and I want a text on top of that progress bar. So what I'm gonna call this is our incoming %, and we want a variable which is max %. Why do I keep both? Because not everything will be just till 100. Some things will also be 250, 125. For most default stats, we won't go that high, but for the ones we have mainly here, we will. Okay, so what I want to create in here is a vertical box. In this vertical box, I want a text, and not just any text. I want a text wrapped with a scale box. Why do I create a scale box? So the text stays within the bounds we define for it. In our case, this will be our bounds for the text. And after I just created the text, I want a progress bar with a overlay, because we want to overlay some text. And what I'm gonna do with this progress bar, I'm just gonna really quickly go in here, fill color is okay, style, background image, let's just make this a bit more gray, and fill image, let's make this a bit, yeah, that can be white. So if we look at it, we can see it fill, but what we want here with the overlay is we want to set it to fill, so it takes up the bottom part. And now if we, for example, change the progress, we would see progress changing like this. It's a bit weird looking, but it will fix itself because of, I think, background. If we change it, nah, it doesn't fix it. Doesn't really matter for now, at least. So let me set this to fill, and then let's take some text, and we're gonna put this text over this box. So in this, oops. Huh? Oh yeah, because I need to also put a scale box on here. And now I think I can reorder this. So yeah, there we go. And this text will be our status text. What I want to do with this, yeah, I think that's all right. Okay, so this is our status text. And this is our item name. All right. This should be variable. This should be variable. Then the progress bar should be variable. There we go. And in here, what we're gonna do is, which way around is it? So what we want to do is we want to take this float divided by float like this, and with this we just want to set our progress bar. So set %. Then for the text we have on top of the progress bar, we want to do it a little bit different. So also this, what it does, so let's say we have incoming % at 60 and our max % is at 100, then we take 60 divided by 100, which returns a 0.6, meaning this will fill to 0.6%. Understood? It's pretty simple. Okay. So then we take this, which is our status text, and what we want to do is we want to set text, just like this. And what we want to do with this is we want to convert this text to string, and we want to use the string so we can format it a bit. So I'm gonna put a append in here, and I'm gonna put a slash in between. So what this append does, it takes value 1 and value 2. In my case, I have 3 values. So it makes a text out of the values you have. In my case, it will be value 1, which is my incoming %, slash my value 2. So if we have 60-100, it would look something like 60-100. So 60 out of 100. And what I like to do, actually in this case, I'm not gonna do that. I would have added some spaces, but I think it would look a bit weird. All right. And the next thing I wanna do, the last thing actually in this blueprint, is I want to take this item name and I want to set text, and this text will be a bit different because what I'm going to do, I'm going to promote this to a variable, and this is going to be our status name. So the status name will be exposed and editable. With this now done, we can go back to our inventory and we can search for our new widget. So widget blueprint mod stati listing. And now what we can do, if we put it in here and set it to fill, we can now just see this, and the aspect ratio is a bit weird. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this on like 5 on the X, actually 5 on, let's put it on like 15, 20 on X. There we go. And this is gonna be our head. And then I need 6 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now I have those. So it's gonna be head, thorax, belly, right arm, left arm, right leg, left leg. Also, let me fix that very quickly. Also, I'm gonna rename this to stati underscore right leg, and I'm gonna do that with all. So right leg, left leg, Okay, left leg, right arm. Oh, that's left arm. Whoops, apologize about that. Left arm, then right arm. Actually, I think I called it torso, didn't I? Torso. Torso. Then here I'm gonna call this thorax. And then we have our head. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select all of those and add a little bit of padding around it. I normally wouldn't do this because I would have my UI toolkit, but without having my spacing functions, it's a bit annoying to do this with a little bit of time constraints. So what we have now, if we turn this off, is we have a few variables. And what I think I'm gonna do very quickly is I'm gonna go into my assets and create a new folder called materials. And I just want to add a blank material. So material, which is gonna be m_UI fixer, because I do not like rounded buttons myself unless I have like a proper texture for it and not just, I don't like the default texture from Unreal. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change the material domain to user interface, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a vector free with just pressing free and clicking. And this vector free is gonna be completely white and it's gonna be in final color. So what we can do with this now is, we see right now this is weirdly fading here. So if I go in here, and go into the progress bar and UI fixer, there we go. We can already see it looks a bit better. There we go. Now it's a full color instead of being a half color, like a rounded color. And progress bars are a lot cleaner now. So with this done, is I think I'm gonna do something very quickly. Is I'm gonna change the aspect ratio to be higher so the text is a bit more readable. So in here, let's set this to like a 5. There we go. Now it's nice and readable. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add 2 more down here, which is gonna be food and drink. Okay, great. Drink, and on the main widget, which first of all, let me rename this to stat high drink and stat high food. So we have those two, and in our main UI, which we called player HUD, what I'm actually gonna do is, first of all, I'm gonna add a widget switcher. I really hope I'm not going too fast for everybody. Otherwise, just watch the video at half speed. But this widget switcher will be our WS main. Why do I call it WS main? Because this widget switcher will pretty much switch between inventory, main screen, main HUD, and all that important stuff. So, but in my case, I'm gonna add a spacer first. This will be our normal screen, and on the second one I'm gonna add WBP inventory. So what the widget switcher does is we can provide it with an index. In our case, the spacer will be 0 and this widget blueprint inventory will be 1, and we can switch through active sub widgets just very, very easily. I'm gonna show that in more detail in a second, but for now I want to finish up the setup of progress bar. In my case, I do not want to clutter the player's screen with too much UI input, especially if you're working in a more realistic driven type of game. It is very important to not distract the player. Also, I would highly recommend against actually adding a ammo status bar, because that just feels a bit off-putting. So what I would do if I work on a more realistic driven game, When it comes to inventory, I add a way for the player to actually check the magazine so he can pull it out, look into the magazine, or if it's, for example, a magazine with a side window, he can roughly check how much ammo it is, or if it's a pistol mag with some indicators, he can also check it that way, or check by weight. But I do not pretty much add any thing that would make the game too easy. I know it sounds a bit weird, but I try to keep most of the games I work on more to a core audience, so some features will need to get and the player will need to need some time to get used to, but it will be more immersive. All right, enough talk about immersion. So I want another one of my stati listings, and what I'm gonna do with this, I'm gonna add this to my canvas panel and set this to 0, 0. But what I'm gonna do is with this, I'm gonna add this with a vertical box and wrap this with a horizontal box. Oops. Wrap with horizontal box and set those to, first of all, this is to fill. Then I need to set this to fill. And then I need to set this to fill. So what I can easily do with this, I can use a spacer and I can place this in here. Make it like this and make this only 0.1. Oh, I need to make this 0.1. And then I take this again and place it down here. And actually make this like 0.25 and make the aspect ratio a bit wider. So let's set this to like 40 and 10. And this is gonna be our stamina. All right. So with this done now, we are mainly done with laying out widgets. I think I'm gonna, at the end of the episode, do a really quick debug widget so we are able to modify those values. But let's just continue actually setting up the stamina system. So with this done, one thing I want to do, first of all, is add a border to this and just give it like a dark gray color. So we have a visual distinction between our normal HUD and our inventory. All right. So with this now, I want to also have a function to update all these values and to update those values. So what I want to do here is make a actually I want to make a function f update player status, player health. And what I want to get in here is our health variable, health, sh health, and I'm gonna call this current health. No, well, I'm just gonna call this health. And what I'm gonna just do is I'm gonna split the struct, and I need to get all these variables. So head, torso, thorax, right left leg. Oops. Right leg. Right leg. Oh, that's just left leg. Okay, good. So left leg. Left leg. What do I have? Head, torso, thorax, left leg, left arm, right leg. So what we want to do is, I think I just called update progress. And what we could technically do is in update progress. Yeah, actually, no, I'm not going to do this. But what I can do is I can split the struct pin and just take this. Great. I need to really quickly switch those around, just like this, just so we don't have to do some annoying stuff. So current health, incoming percent, max health, max percent. That easy. So now I copy paste this, and the next thing is gonna be our thorax. in here, I can just break this over here. Max health, current health. Then I can take this over here, break the next part, which I think is going to be our torso. Yep, it's our torso. So torso, which is going to be our static torso. There you go. And what I can do is I can raise this up a bit. Then I can left arm, break this, right arm, break this, and just do this for the next two. So just like this, and just slowly start listing them. Just like this, and then update progress right here. Oops, come on. Max percent, incoming percent, and then, oh god, let me just really quickly reroute them so they're a bit more clear. Just like this. So left arm, so this is the left arm one. So left arm, make this a bit cleaner. Then the next one should be right arm, right? Right arm. There you go. And I think it's left leg and right leg. So it's left leg, right leg. Okay. So let's just drag this over here. Drag this down like this, and drag this down like this. And just like this, we can do left leg, right leg, left leg, right leg. Exactly. Okay. So just like this, this is left leg. And then we have the same thing here, just for the right leg. There you go. And then, because this will always update when this variable here updates, we want to just forward everything into here and let the player know that his health updated. So what we also want to do is, also let me remove that F. That's an annoying thing that stuck with me, which I shouldn't do anymore. Then we want a function which is update player food and update player drink. Update player drink. With this, it will be a bit easier because food in our case will be where's food? And I think, yeah, update progress. In our case, we don't need max percent, we just need incoming percent, and max percent is 100. You can just copy paste this and player drink. And right here, do this. And now we have all our update functions to be able to just call it and let the UI deal with the rest. All right. So did I forget anything? I don't think so. Okay. Oh yeah, one thing, but this is not an inventory. This is inside, not this one, but inside the player HUD. We want a custom event. Custom event. And we want to call this show inventory. So what we're going to do with show inventory, actually we don't need this to be an event, we can just make this a function. Show inventory is, we want a boolean in there, is inventory visible. And with this inventory visible, we're going to do a select. And then we take our widget switcher main and set active widget index. So what we can do now is we can drag this into here, and on false we want 0, and on true we want 1. So what we now pretty much created is a way to update our active widget from our, oops, I also want the stamina thing to be in the background, not in the foreground. So let me just drag this above here. So now if the widget switcher switches, we shouldn't be able to see the stamina. Yeah, we also need a way to update stamina. I forgot about that one. So update stamina. This is our last one. And we just take this in here. and our max percent is 100, and our incoming percent is this. Actually, yes. Just keep it at 100, keeping it simple. And this is our, where is it? Right here. Stati stamina. All right, let's take stati stamina right here and plug it into this. So now we are pretty much done with setting up the UI. Let's get back into our character now. And what we want to do is we want to get our begin play, not Pali. And on begin play, we want to, first of all, get our player controller, get HUD, cast to our player HUD and promote this to a variable. And I'm going to call this ref for reference player HUD. Why do we make this a variable and not cast constantly? Because casting is generally expensive and a HUD, from my knowledge, doesn't get destroyed during gameplay. So with getting this ref once, we should be set. And after this, we want a authority check, of authority. Which one has authority? And depending if we have authority, we want to set start a timer. Set timer by function name. In my case, I'm gonna call this function stati ticker. Why stati ticker? Because we wanna constantly tick through our stati to see what we need to modify. So the time is gonna be around 0.2, and we want this to be looping. When I'm now in my stati ticker, what I want to do is I want to first create a variable which is weight in kilogram. I take my weight in kilogram out. I divide it by, I think around 20 for having just a rough number. So when like normal load is 20 kilograms, everything below that will be low load, and everything above that would be a multiplier. Then I want a new variable in here, which is going to be our default stamina per tick. And this default stamina per tick is just going to get multiplied by this. And what this does pretty much, if we, for example, for 40 kilograms, we have 2 times the load, and we take 2 times the load by our stamina tick, so every 0.2 seconds, it's gonna double our load. And you can generally play around with those variables, but what I'm gonna actually do for our default stamina tick, I'm gonna set this to 0.1. Then we wanna check if we are sprinting, and then we wanna pull this into a select. If we are sprinting, we want to double our stamina use. Not 20, that would be a little much. But we want to double our stamina use. And depending on what kind of game you work on, you can manually adjust this. Then we want to take our stamina and we want to minus this. And then we want to do this. And then we want to clamp this between 0 and 100. 100 being our max stamina. And then we want to set our stamina. And then we want to call update stamina, which we need to call in the client. So let's make a custom event ROC update stamina. And this is gonna be running on a client, just like this. And then we can get our player HUD, get our reference to our widget, player HUD, and then I think we can just do update stamina, there we go. And our incoming percent will be just our stamina. And let's just plug this in here. So every time we set our stamina, we want to call update stamina. How did I call it? Oh, yeah, I just want to drag off update stamina on owning client. What does ROEC owning client do? So ROEC stands for run on owning client. So run on the client that this character physically owns / controls. So in our case, when we possess a client, we technically own this client. So what we can do is we can say, oh, this client owns this, so let's update his value, because every other client doesn't need to know about this. So in our case, when we update our stamina, we want our player to know, oh, we have new stamina, let's update it. And this is literally what we're doing here. So we're gonna call update stamina here, which goes in here, and then it updates our progress bar. All right, then let's go back into our stat ticker. And if we have near 0, we want to say we want to disable sprinting. This general action should also update our speed, which we deal with in a second, because we have a few new variables which can affect speed. So then I want a Boolean here, because I want to check if the player is actually moving or if he's standing still. So let me take this down here. And then I want to get velocity. I want to get vector length. And then I want to check does not equal to 0. And actually, let's make a local variable and just call this is player moving. There you go. So if the player is moving, we want to do a select over here, because we anyway need to go through the whole stack. So if we have booleans which determine the stuff, I don't know if it's the greatest thing. So what I can easily just do is, if player is moving, I can set this to true. So we want to reduce. If the player is not moving, I want to set this to false, because we do not want to reduce the player's stamina. So let's drag this all the way over here. And our regaining stamina will be our stamina variable plus, and then a clamp. There we go. So it will be between 0 and 100. And we want to plug this into our false, because we want, depending on what we do, we want to set a different value. Then we want to take our default stamina per tick, and we want to get our weight in kilograms, which in this case, we're going to divide by 30 instead of 20. It just feels a bit better to have a slower regain than a use, at least from my testing. So you slower regain than you use up your stamina. All right. And if I'm not wrong, this should be everything with the stamina. One thing is, because we don't need to tick when we are doing specific things, so we want to do a branch. And then we want a OR condition in here, because if player is moving and the stamina is equal to 0, we do not need to go through the whole stack. Equal to 0. And the other way around, if it's true and this is true, so if we're not moving and our stamina is equal to 1, we don't want to do anything. All right. Also, let's just make this a bit simpler and put a clamp afterwards instead of in front. So we can reduce the complexity of the blueprint a bit to make it more readable. So if we should click play now, we should be able to see, oops, and I also need to, in our widget blueprint, Widget player HUD, which should display this progress bar. Oh yeah, one thing I need to also do, which is very important, is go in here and in our HUD, in our game mode, so HUD, player HUD, save this, and if we click play now, we should see our stamina, which is currently at 1 because I forgot to set this to 100. So, hello, can you please open, there you go. So let's set our stamina to 100. And also in here, oops, that's the wrong one. Let's go back in our class and set our taker in not equal to 1, rather equal to 100. So if we're standing still, we have 100. And if we start moving, we should start losing stamina, but I think I forgot something. So I'm gonna be right back. So the main issue I had is I have to flip this output. So all I did is I added a not node in here. Ignore the print string, this was just for bug testing. And don't forget to set a default value of weight for your player, because otherwise you will run into issues. So if you want to just do a 1 kilogram thing, you can do that, but you need a default value, and then everything on top will be like default load. You should always at least have a kilogram on you, technically, like clothing or something, because otherwise the system won't work great. Okay, so one thing I also want to do is I want to go and update progress in here in our incoming percent. I want to change something because I saw something that is not very nice. So let's round this out. So round this variable and plug this instead, because it is otherwise very messy with all the decimal points. So if we now wait, we can slowly see our stamina go up, but our progress bar is still a bit smoother. So in this case, if we start at stamina of 100% and we start moving around, we can start seeing slowly our stamina decreasing. And pretty much the text is only for debug purposes, unless you later want to keep it in the game. All right, this is pretty much our stamina system. So the next thing would be, we want a system, not for stamina, but we want a system for food. And food should always get reduced unless you eat something. So let's, in our case, just go ahead and make some space in here. So let's just select everything and just move that over. I'm using my arrow keys because it's easier to move stuff over that way. All right, so if we take our food and our water, food should generally take slower than water. So what I'm gonna do is water, I'm gonna take water, and what I'm gonna do is every tick, the default value is minus float times float, and unless he's not moving, so let's do a select in here. Well, also for sprinting, but we want to first of all check if player is moving, and then we want to check if player is sprinting. So, oops. So if we're moving, we want to lose around 0.001. If we're sprinting, we want to lose around 0.01. And if we're not sprinting, we want to lose around 0.05. So we go from 0.01 to 0.05 and 0.1. All those variables you can adjust depending on what kind of game you're working on. And one thing I want to do I want to take my weight and have this to be a factor. So if I take my weight and then do a multiply, and do this in here. And we want one thing I want to do in here is I want to clamp the float to be minimum 1 and maximum like 1,000. It's never going to be that high, but just in case, the minimum needs to be 1. And I think I'm also going to do this with my other things. So in here, this is just a way to make sure you don't run into weird issues where players can just run forever, unless you want that, if they have no weight on them. So this is just a way to make sure that there's at least always a 1 multiplier. All right, so we have our water multiplier over here. And what I can do, I can also do a food multiplier. And our food multiplier is pretty much the same as the water multiplier, but in the end, I would say I divide it by 2. Because you don't need to eat as often as you need to drink. All right. Then every time we want to always update stamina. Well, I think I'm gonna rename this to update taking stats. Taking stats. There you go. Now we need to go back in there. To do the stat eye ticker. And doesn't matter what we do, we want to do this. So at the end of every execution line, we want to update our stat eyes. So yeah, that's all of them. So in here, we want to now get ref HUD, and then we get player HUD. No. Okay, give me 1 second. I need to look into the widget again. So player HUD, and this is called, not this one, widget blueprint inventory. Widget blueprint inventory. Get widget blueprint inventory. And what we want to do is update food and update drink. Update drink. So we can take those two, plug them into here, and food is going to be here, and water or drink is going to be here. So let me really quickly check back into my stat eye ticker and make sure we are not clamping it at the end. That could end very badly. So what we want to clamp it between is 0 and 100. I nearly forgot about this because if you don't clamp it, values can be more than they should be. And if you want to be extra patient, we can actually, well, no, we always lose food. But if we, for example, are at 0 food, we then could do a check, and if we're at 0 food, all our limbs lose like 1 health. All right. So when I save this, you can go click play. And if I don't think we have set up keys, no. So let me really quickly set up keys. So, and in input, what's input? We need to open inventory, which I'm gonna bind to G. Where is it? G. And then I'm gonna call in here, in the event graph, open inventory. And for this, I'm gonna get my ref player HUD. Did I set anything up in player HUD? No. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to get the player HUD ref just like this. And then I want to, did I call it up? Not update stamina. Actually, let me sometimes forget the names of my functions. So show inventory. It's just called show inventory. There you go. So show inventory. And what I want to do is I want to add a flip-flop. A flip-flop just pretty much flips between A, B, A, B, A, B every time it's run. All right, so, whoops. Oh, yeah, I need to hook this up also. So if we now click play and I press G, we can see our food being at 1, which something I think went wrong. And just for now, let me set food to 100 and water to 100. And I think I've done something wrong up here. So player drink. All right, now that should be fine. So if I click play and press G, why doesn't drink get updated is my question now. Let me just really quickly fix that and I'll be right back. Okay, I found the issue is because I used food instead of drink. So let me set this to drink. So this is food, this is drink. And now what I want to do is really quickly go into my stat taker and take this variable a bit higher. So let me just add a multiplier of 10, just so I can visually see that something is happening. This is after the multiplier. So after division by 2, I want to multiply by 10, just for debug purposes. So we can just click play now, and we can go down in our inventory, and we see we already lost food. And if we walk around a little bit, we should see, yeah, we're losing food and drink, which for some reason is the same variable. Did I mess up? Event graph, water, food, food, water, food, water. No. Oh, wait. Well, water. Ah, yeah, over here it needs to be food. I apologize for that. So let's set this to food and click play again. And let's run around a little bit. And we can see that our statis are going down. And we see that drink is going down quicker than our food. And if we want really quickly to have a very detailed view into this, I can go into my event graph, click on this function really quickly, and follow the stack to here. And then just take the incoming percent. It won't be beautiful, but it will give you the most detailed information you could get. So in this case, now we see on the right that our drink is going down actively, because drink is always going down even if we're not moving, just at a slow rate. And you can see the same with food, but you can see that food should be slower. And how it should be, food is slower with going down. All right, that is our food and our drink. Also in the next episode, I will cover probably just the basic inventory system and how to regain those stats. But this is not a topic now, we're not done yet. So our last thing I want to do is I want to damage the player randomly. So how I'm going to do this is just a debug way. It's not the way it's going to be final. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a custom event, not a custom event, but a key input, which in my case will be key K. I can't look for key, but I can look for just K. And just scroll down and look for input key K. Okay, let's look something more easily definable. Let's just use Q. And what I'm gonna do is I make a custom event, run on servers, damage player. So this is run on server. So ours damage player. And when I call this ours damage player, I want a function in here, damage player, which actually debug random damage player. There you go. That's the better name. Okay, and then what we're gonna call is debug random damage player. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna get this, we're gonna split this, and at the end we wanna set this. So I'm gonna really quickly just make a simple way of randomizing the player's damage. This is definitely not, oh wait, you know what? Let's make a quick function for this. And randomize player damage debug. So what I want to take, and I want to make this pure. And what I want in here is once the body part, like 2 times body part structure. So body part, and over here. So incoming body part, outgoing body part. And what we want to do in here is we want to split this. And this is just for debug purposes. And max health. And then we want to get a random float in range. And this is our max. And this is our min. Well, our min is 0. And like this. So what's the issue here? Oh yeah, I need to hook this up. All right. So what we can just do this, we can just drag this in for all body parts. And it should be one too many. So let's delete one of them and just hook them up. So what this pretty much does is it gets a random value between 0 and max health, and then it applies it. Want to call after this? After we do random damage, we want to get a custom event. ROC update player health. Visualize player health, something like that. Visualize player health. So what I do is I run on only client because I want to go from server back to client. And I want to call ROC, oops, I need to compile. ROC visualize player health. And then in here, I want to get my inventory and health. Update player health, just like this. Put this into here. Then I have a variable called player health. And what I do, I plug this into here. Make sure I compile and save, just to be sure not that a random crash just makes me lose all my progress. And go in here, and I think it was Q. So if I open up this, we can now see it applies random damage every time I press Q. We can also beautify this a bit, and instead of doing our detailed view like we're doing right now, we can go back in here and in here and use our integer again instead of our float. So this will round it down, so it's a lot more readable and it's a lot nicer to look at. So if I press K and I open my inventory, oops, not K, it's Q, you can see how the damage spreads randomly throughout, and we get a bit of feedback, and we can change the values. And this value changes on everybody pretty much. So if I change this on this client, it will change on this client and only this client. But we could have a way to actually read this out and let other players look at it. Okay, with this done, I think I'm gonna do one more thing. So in our update speed function, I want to check if player stamina equals 0. Because if it equals to 0, we do not want, like we want to divide by something. Oh wait, we want to divide float by float. And the thing we wanted to divide it by is we're gonna take our stamina and we're gonna do a select. And normally we want to divide it by 1 if it's not 0, and if it's 0, we want to divide by 2.5. And we can also add something on top of that. We can take our weight in kilograms, divide this float by 20, and then multiply the value we got here float by 0.1. And then what I can do is, let me think about this. So, and then we want to, let's say, for example, we want a float minus float. So I want to take 1 minus this. And then I can just do a multiply. And I very quickly will explain what this does. So if we look at this, we get our weight in kilogram. 1 is our default. So if we have 1, then actually let's do this minus 1. There you go. So if we are at 1, we will have 1 here. So it's our full speed. But if this is at 2, it will be 0.9. Right? Oh no, right. Okay, so if this is, if our speed is 20, we do not have any modification to our speed. Also, let me clamp this between 0 and 1. But if our weight is higher than that, let's say our weight is at 40, we will have we have 2 here, we minus 1, we have 1, so 1 times 0.1, and then then it's 0.9, then we multiply by 0.9, so our walk speed is slower. And we need to hook up some of those functionality up still, but for now this will work. All right, so let's check our stamina system out that we just created. So if we say we want to run till we have no more stamina, we can see we got very, very slow, even if we don't run. Unless we stop, and we start sprinting, for example, we don't get our ability to sprint back. Like we will be very, like when we hit 0, our character will be very slow. All right. I think this was everything for this part. I really hope you enjoyed it and you learned something. I hope this was a bit of a mess. I really apologize for that, but I'm a bit under pressure at the moment. I didn't know if I can get another part out this week because I have a lot going on with my job. And yeah, so this is a part. I hope I didn't go too quickly through things. If I missed anything, if you want me to cover something, please let me know. I might have missed something of the things I wanted to do, something small. If I did, please let me know. But with this said, this was part 2. I hope you enjoyed and I hope you learned something. Down below is a Discord and a Trello, what will be upcoming next. And if you have any requests, please make sure to either leave them in the comments or leave them in the Discord just for me so I know what's going on. If you want to support these tutorials a bit better, you can also head over to Patreon. I now released today my UI toolkit for Patreon, so everybody that subscribes at tier 5 will get access to the UI toolkit for whatever you want to use it for. But with this said, I wish you all a very great day and goodbye.